Hi, and welcome to the second SRTOL rant. I'm going to look at the survey filled out on students' rates. I ask you some questions, got some feedback, and I'm going to look at real quickly the writing prompt and the rubric. Make sure you see what those are. If you go to must-read material in weeks 3 and 4, there's the prompt. I'm assuming you've read it before. Read it again. It was adopted in 1974. It was reaffirmed in 2004, the 30-year anniversary. And evidently all English teachers seem to agree that this is right and good. This is what orthodoxy means. Orthodoxy is when everyone thinks the same way. One of my favorite quotes is that when everyone thinks the same thing, no one's thinking at all. But Stanley Fish, in that article you did your reading log on, says we got to get rid of this orthodoxy, this idea of students' rights to their own language. This gives you three options, three suggestions on how to approach the paper. I don't know if they're really the only three possible ways to approach the paper, but they give you a foothold, leverage into the paper. 1250 to 1700 words, minimum 1250. I will penalize you for going under the word count. I don't penalize for going over generally unless I'll stop reading at 1700 words. This is largely the rubric. I'll cover that again later. This is the statement. You need to read that many times and understand it. Don't quote the entire statement in your paper. Quote parts of it. A lot of people like to put that in as a block quote because it takes up a lot of space. Generally, that's not worthwhile in a 3-page paper. I will recommend, though, if you do want to quote this, find the source somewhere else. Don't quote my handout. In the blog, the first blog I did, I found somebody who reproduced the entire quote. You can take it from him. There's a link to it. Here's the rubric. It does need to have a thesis statement, which I'll be talking about after your second draft's turned in. Basically what your point is. We'll talk about thesis statements later. I don't think in real life anyone starts with a thesis statement before they start writing, unless your teacher's doing things for you. Unless your teacher's doing all your work for you. No, in real life people do research, they have a tentative thesis in their mind, they rough draft, then they come up with a thesis and write it down, then they change the rough draft, and it's all recursive. I'm going to grade you over the end text citations, the works consulted page. Works cited. I say works consulted because if in doubt, put it on your works cited or works consulted page. I never got in trouble for having too many sources on my works cited page or works consulted, what I wrote. Professor gave me this advice early in my career. I always called it works consulted. If in doubt, I put it on there. It makes it look like you did more work and more research, because even if you didn't quote it, it's on your works consulted page. It's playing it safe. If something shows up in your paper and you read it, but you didn't know whether or not to quote, to cite it in text, and then you accidentally include a sentence from it, you can get kicked out of KU. I know a guy who did. But if you have it on works consulted and you just forgot to put quotation marks around something, you won't get in that much trouble. In text, you have to have one block quote and one short quote. I don't know if that's clear there, but I expect that, and I will be looking for that. It says 2 examples of in-text citation. Somewhere. I'm telling you now. It's written someplace else too. I want a block quote. Synthesis, I want to see that you're weaving together ideas effectively. That they flow, all right? That they make sense, and they're not just thrown together in some sort of absurd word salad. I get a lot of word salads, and I don't really appreciate that. Only 15% of your grade is mechanics and grammar. What I've noticed is grammar tends to be really bad when people don't know what the hell they're talking about. You're going to have to write a couple drafts to figure out exactly what you're talking about. I don't care what your opinion is or your point of view, politically or any other way on this paper. I've written both sides of the issue. It just kind of depends on who's important to me and what I'm doing and where I'm living. Passive voice is R, was, were, be, being, been, am. If I see too much of it, I will take 10% off, up to. Usually I like ding points on passive voice if everything else is looking pretty good, and they would have had an A otherwise. I generally don't move anybody from a B to a C because of passive voice, but yeah, a lot of people miss A's because of passive voice. You have to have a conference either through Skype with me next week or at the Writing Center. I can go to the Writing Center and get proof that you had that conference. Or you can get the yellow sheet, take it home, and take a picture if I don't do that. Now, the other thing I want to talk about a little bit. Alright, this is the blog post. I'm going to update this later. I thought that the Sheltering Superman Mom was relevant to students' rights.